Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Kassam. I'm the Director of Financial Consulting with NBS, and I'm here to just give you a little bit of background on how we approached the user and regulatory fee study for CRRD. So this will just be a brief presentation. Space bar to go? Okay. So what a fee study does is it defines the full cost recovery potential of individually based services. So we're here to define the maximum allowable amount that can be charged for any specific service. What we studied was the Community Risk Reduction Division's services. So that includes permits to operate under the California Fire Code, mandated inspections that are performed by the staff, required annual occupancy inspections such as the B and M inspections that were referred to in the public comment. Development plan check and construction inspection were sort of reviewed tangentially because they're part of the overall service package, and then there are some miscellaneous charges for services by the district that we also included. So this was a comprehensive study of fees and charges that fall under user and regulatory fee categories for the district. There is a difference between a user fee and a regulatory fee. A user fee is a charge imposed for a service provided or required due to the request or action of an individual or entity. It's a voluntary service, and a regulatory fee usually has some type of enabling legislation or requirement behind it that requires action of the district to regulate an activity. Overall, these are cost recovery opportunities. They're implemented by the board, and we're not talking at all tonight about fines, development impact fees, I think what you guys call the capital facilities fees. That's not what we're talking about tonight, and we're not talking about taxes. So these fees under various laws and regulations and sections of the government code, it's smattered all over the place inside of various codes. The foundational guiding light is basically that these need to be limited to the estimated and reasonable cost of providing the service for which the fee is charged. And what I've put up here are sort of the three main guiding lights that consultants like myself rely on when we do a study like this. Although we could go on for a long time about where in the Constitution and various sections of the government code these exact principles keep appearing and reappearing. So Proposition 218, even though user fees like this are exempt from that adoption process, there's a lot of principles in there that talk about equitability between receivers of services. So fundamentally, we need to be able to pair revenues received with the costs. We have sections of the Mitigation Fee Act that relate more to development fees, and in there it talks about the estimated and reasonable cost of providing plan check and inspection type services. And the most recent legislation is actually Proposition 26, and that just further defines the difference between a tax and a fee and how you go about fairness and equitability in assigning those charges. So the main data of any fee study is typically the adopted budget. So staffing levels and expenditures according to the adopted budget are what we've used as a basis. Also, Sacramento Metro Fire District has some tracked time available related to the services they provide, and we don't get that in every study, so that was very helpful that your staff is tracking how long it takes them to provide services. So we could use that actually as a basis in many cases. We also look at workload. We have many cross-checks in our analytical model to make sure that we're not structuring a fee schedule that will either vastly over-recover the cost of providing service or vastly under-recover. So that's a very critical component of our analysis. There's four main analytical sections of a study like this. We make sure that we get to know the organization through an organizational and service time analysis. We tie a value, a dollar value per hour, so we value the time on an hourly basis. We perform a cost of service analysis, which is where we actually come up with the maximum allowable fee amount for each individual service. And we also tackle any issues that are going on related to fee design. And those can be either issues that we notice when we look at your existing way of charging, or issues that are coming up from the community, or questions staff may have about, hey, could we structure this a little bit differently? So those are the four main areas. So regarding getting to know the organization, I think the most important aspect of that is that we are looking at how staff provide services on a couple different levels. One very important level is the actual time to provide a specific service. So you see this big arrow dropping down there that says for every service shown on the fee schedule, we've asked for an estimate or a tracked amount of time it takes on average to provide that service. But it's also important to note that we've looked at the entire division of community risk reduction. So we've also looked at types of services that are not recoverable in these user and regulatory fee services, and we've carved those out. So you see these other direct services here, we've carved those out and not tried to recover those in the charges for services. And then in any agency, we have the overhead component, and that can be for CRRD itself, and it can also be agency-wide. So we have looked at those costs as well and included them in the calculation of the maximum allowable recoverable cost per service. So I mentioned before that we do a time valuation exercise. This is just a very basic schematic here that we're considering direct costs, which are you can tie them right back to the adopted budget, and we're also considering indirect costs. And there's a couple different ways of looking at those, but the most important thing is that we get to a fully burdened cost per hour, and the way that we develop that for this study happens to be a composite rate. So it's not by individual staff person, it's by the activity of CRRD itself, okay? So might be a little bit small for the people in the audience, but these are the results or those blended rates, composite fully burdened rates by major functional activity of CRRD. So these are the results, and you can see here what the different categories of costs are that we've considered. We've considered labor, we've considered general operating expenses, titled here as recurring non-labor. We've looked at district-wide overhead, such as finance, HR, legal, and then overhead activities that happen inside of CRRD. So those are sort of the layer cake of costs associated with providing services. We come up with a blended cost per hour. And then from there, we take that blended cost per hour and we multiply it by the estimated or known time it takes to provide an individual service. And if there are any specific materials that need to be added to that fee, such as a specific sign or comes up every once in a while, then we also call that out and add it in specifically and make sure not to double count it. And that's how you get to a maximum fee amount. That's how we get to the outcomes that are in front of you this evening. I mentioned that we go through fee design exercises, and there are many ways that you can structure to charge fees. So most of the fees shown on Sac Metro Fire's fee schedule are flat fees, single fee, single service. But we also do talk about, whether we should do some fees which scale up and down based on a criteria, or whether it would be more appropriate to have a deposit for certain types of services. And we recognize that the maximum amount for any particular service may not be palatable for adoption at the full cost recovery level. And this arrow going up and down here sort of shows the main reasons we run across why something wouldn't be adopted at 100% full cost recovery, or maybe why it would. So I'm sure that some of these issues are included in staff's recommendations related to this study and probably on your minds and the public's minds this evening. And anytime we adopt a fee at less than cost recovery, then it's important to recognize that that subsidy comes from somewhere. It has to come from another revenue source. It can't be loaded on a customer that has a bigger ability to pay. For example, it has to come from the general fund or from another funding source if it's available. So we always like to throw this slide up here and just say, there's really no free lunch. It comes from somewhere, right? This is a summary table of results. So when we get down to it, we separated the services into three main categories. We have the sort of operational permit side of things, these routine annual or biannual inspections, or California fire code permits that need to be issued. We have development plan review and inspection and miscellaneous. So what we found through the study is that currently your fee revenue is about 1.8 million. That's what you're bringing in. That was based on the last fiscal year. And the full cost of providing those services is roughly 4 million. So there's a pretty big gap between what you're currently collecting and what the full cost to the district is of providing that service. And that equates to about 45% cost recovery. And I'll tell you just from my experience over 10 to 12 years now, that's a typical outcome of a study. So there was nothing here that was completely shocking in that respect. Okay? So if the board tonight was to adopt all the fees in the study at 100% cost recovery, then we would be reducing the subsidy for those services by about 2.2 million, which is a significant number. And all this study does is just provide you with the information to realign these fees at full cost recovery or something less. So we're just here to defend that full cost recovery amount and help with the fee setting action related to that. So you see this column here that says annual estimated revenues at recommended fee. So that number is where the staff has taken much consideration into what the community can bear or what they recommend charging at this time. And so basically the recommendation is not $4 million for all services at full cost recovery. It's something more like 2.1, which brings the total cost recovery from 45% to 52%. So it's not a huge overall annual gain. It's a recalibration. And this is just sort of a breakdown of what those recommendations were once we went through them. So staff recommended cost recovery policy of 80% related to permits to operate, and the study addressed the issues of multi-permit occupancy fees. Mandated and required annual inspections were also a cost recovery policy on average of 80%. And for development plan check and construction inspection, we reviewed and enhanced the fee structure. That was probably the main focus of our efforts, was sort of bringing things up to industry standard and best practices in the way fees are charged. And there's not any recommended increases there for now. Probably we'll be revisiting those more in 2014. Miscellaneous user fees was mostly 100%. A lot of those are based on actual cost for specific types of incidents and scenarios that happen out there. So hopefully that wasn't too fast. Didn't run you through it too fast, and that's it.
I'd just like to add to that under the recommendation where we're about $2 million short, if I'm explaining that right, of full cost recovery. That's a fire station and an engine company that's closed.
Yeah.
Okay, so that kind of puts the value on it. We have 6 of those that are closed at the moment in the district. And yet, as we looked at this, and as you'll see as we go forward, there's a significant amount of people that will actually see their fees go down in this. And then one last point is on the development fees, in that we're working on that, especially for new development. We'll be coming back with that sometime in mid-2014. It's a much more detailed study that we'll be bringing to you.